we land on planet Earth into some family situation. And in my case, I was very blessed. I landed into an Irish Catholic family, married parents, mom and dad never drank, never took drugs, no obvious madness. And there were five of us brought up in that environment. There was no money. Hence part of my drive to learn how other people got ahead. Hence my drive to finding out how to build a business, because going back to employees trade time for money. My dad did that all his life. They taught us all how to work hard. They taught us all. My mother would say, "You get nothing for nothing," right? But she also said, she encouraged us to make mistakes. The man or the woman who never made a mistake made nothing, she said.
Colm, at what stage in life did you find yourself? What relationship broke you to discover yourself?
Wow. I wasn't expecting that hard question to start. Haven't even found myself. I came across this thing some years back, John, on social media, which I've embraced ever since, which is instead of us getting older in life, we're in fact graduating up through the levels of life like in a game. And so I achieved level 60 in March of this year, 2023, and I'm very proud of having achieved level 60. This poor Sinead O'Connor, who unfortunately passed during the week, and she was only level 56. So we've no idea what's coming around the corner for any of us, John. I'm at the stage in my life where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with the third act, I think is what it's being called. I'm not retired yet, but I've got my sights set on not retiring per se, but pursuing different things. But if I can maybe go back a little, and my apologies for rambling around this answer, I took my first step into self-employment at the age of 35, right? And it took me a number of years to get to that point. So I think probably around the age 30. In fact, I do, now that I remember, so exactly half my lifetime ago at age 30, I remember hitting a wall, basically, right, personally, and realizing that through indecision and without having a plan, life had gifted me, there we go, gift, right? Life had gifted me a plan, which involved family, it involved relationships, it involved a job. But I wasn't particularly fulfilled. And so I stepped about on a journey at around age 30 to find out what would have me more fulfilled. And I realized through soul searching then that I was in a job and I didn't want to have a job. Now, I didn't want to be unemployed either, right? But I didn't want to be employed. And I stumbled across Robert Kiyosaki's work, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the cash flow quadrant. In particular, the cash flow quadrant spoke to me, John. And in that book, which is the second in his series, Robert Kiyosaki discusses the difference between the four players in the world of commerce. There's the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. And so I knew I was an employee at the time, and I was an employee because my dad had been an employee, and his dad had been an employee, and his dad had been an employee. So that was all I knew. But I realized an employee trades time for money, as does the self-employed individual, the man with the van or the lady with the flower shop or the photographer who does weddings, right? And no disrespect to any of those professions, but they self-employed trade their time for money. On the other side of the quadrant, cash flow quadrant, Kiyosaki introduced us to the business owner and the investor. Now, I had no money, right? So I realized the only path for me was to learn the skills of becoming a business owner. Business owner being somebody who leverages their time and their money by involving other people in their organization. And proud to say, here we are 30 years from that moment of insight. We've just celebrated 20 years of our school meals business, which is now an 8-figure business in Ireland today, employed more than 200 people. And so I'm very proud of that fact, if that makes sense. So long-winded answer to your question, I realized around age 30 I needed to make changes. I began to make those changes, and here we are having this conversation 30 years on at age or level 60. And in the main, it has worked. Hasn't been easy necessarily. Certainly hasn't been all roses, but it's been worth it.
Well, but in sharing your experience of employment and self-employment and the transition from employment to self-employment, as you say, Colm, it's never, set in stone. There are risks you have to take. There's hard lessons you have to learn along the journey. And as you say, you're always learning. Going back to your childhood, what was your relationship like with your parents and siblings?
That was great. Yeah, I was blessed. And everybody has a different upbringing. Excuse me. Warren Buffett, excuse me. Warren Buffett refers to it as the ovarian lottery. Right? We land on planet Earth into some family situation. And in my case, I was very blessed. Landed, I landed into an Irish Catholic family. Married parents, mom and dad never drank, never took drugs, no obvious madness. And there were 5 of us brought up in that environment. There was no money. Hence part of my drive to learn how other people got ahead. Hence my drive to finding out how to build a business, because going back to employees trade time for money. My dad did that all his life. Most of his life he changed in latter years before his retirement. But but I was blessed. Good people for sure. They taught us all how to work hard. They taught us all. My mother would say, "You get nothing for nothing," right? She also, and we lost her in February, God rest her. But she also said, she encouraged us to make mistakes. The man or the woman who never made a mistake made nothing, she said. And she's right. She also said, there's no pockets in shrouds, you can't take it with you. So she had all these simple ways of describing, don't get too greedy, work hard, make mistakes, it's all right. But you can't take it with you at the end of the day.
Yeah. It's an interesting outlook in life, to be honest. And I read a book there called The Growth Mindset by Carol Dweck some time ago. And she was talking about the fact that people with a fixed mindset, if they make a mistake, they take it personally. The person with the growth mindset, they learn from that mistake and they have the resolve and resilience to do better the next time around. And I think it's that mindset that your mum tried to develop within you and your siblings, in your childhood. You moved on to school. Did you make friends in school easily, or are you one of those people who was kind of stuck in the corner, shy type of student?
I made friends easily. I wasn't. I remember, that's good. This fascinating conversation, John. I do remember my memory of my primary school years was I was a wimp. Right, I was small in stature. I was perhaps a little shy. I had my own group of friends, where we lived in North Dublin. We were on the main road on a corner site, and behind us there was a housing estate with a green area for kids to play in. So I had my own little gang there, little being the operative word, and gang is probably too strong a word. Group, right? So we're
circle.
But we weren't the cool group. We weren't the sporting group. We were just our own group. So circle. There you go. Yeah. But school, I enjoyed school in the main, but I was a wimp. And I remember I stayed back in 6th class. I started school very early. My older sister is 11 months older than me. I'm the second eldest. So I think it suited our mother to get us both out to school at the same time. So I was actually too young. I was probably 4 or even not even 4 when I started junior infants. I can't remember, of course, back then. But I do remember when I got to 6th class, and I'd gone up through all primary school with this group of lads. And when we got to 6th class, Mum and Dad decided to hold me back for a year. I wasn't quite ready for secondary. So I stayed back. And I remember cycling away from school that day, my last day of my first sixth class, right? And crying because I was never going to see these guys again. But then I remember deciding, I went back into sixth class again, spent a year. Our school, which was in Colester at the time, moved schools over to the top of Sybil Hill and the Holt Road on the corner there, not St. Paul, St. Bridget's, and I was in the first cohort of kids to move into that building. That was fun. And but I remember, and then I got a place in St. Paul's College in Raheny, which was just directly across the road. And Mum and Dad were dead proud of that their son had managed to get a place in St. Paul's College. Apparently, it was a big deal. And but I do remember making a decision, John, that having the realization that I could be anything I wanted to be in secondary, because these kids didn't know me from Adam, right? There was no history, no history of my wimpiness. So I decided that I needed to find my way. And as it happens, this was in the mid-70s, right? This would have been 75 or thereabouts. And the hippie era was coming in. And so I just, by the time I got to sort of junior cert, I was a fully fledged hippie. I had my long hair. The school actually, to aid my plan, if you like, the school, in their infinite wisdom, decided the year I started in St. Paul, they were going to disband with the school uniform, because I don't know what the logic was. It might have been elitist, or there were parents that couldn't afford it, or whatever. I have no idea. But anyway, we were able to go in our civvies, right? See, all these youngsters in blazers who were ahead of us in school.
Yeah.
But we were in civvies. And then it was obviously a mistake, because the very next year they went back to the uniform. So we're the only year that went up right through secondary in our civvies. That suited a hippie like me. I could wear what I liked, and I did. And I wore some atrocious stuff, unashamedly. And but it was fun. It was fun, and so I became this hippie in secondary school, and it gave me an identity. And going back to having no money, right? And this is no reflection on my parents at all. They were hard working, but we were not rich by any stretch. And there was 5 kids, and they never had a bank loan, and they never had credit cards and all that type of stuff. But they lived within the means. Another thing my mother tried to teach me, where she failed miserably before. But she, I decided being a hippie, you'll find this interesting, I think, allowed me be poor in a cool way. We'd buy all my clothes in the Dandelion Market secondhand, right? So I had no money, so spent what little money I had on secondhand gear, and sure, it suited the thing perfectly. And the biggest challenge then was when I entered the workforce in 1980, and realizing I had to cut my beloved hair. It had become my trademark.
Yeah. I do have memories of school myself, and like yourself, Colm, I stayed back a year. I stayed back in second year in secondary school, because like yourself, I was young starting school. I was just about 4 and 2 months, I think it was, when I started primary school, I should say, and I was way too young. Nowadays, of course, kids start school at 5, which is a better age, I think, overall. And they also have transition year in secondary school for a lot of children between junior cert and first year leaving, which I think gives kids a time to think about where they want to go with their careers, gives them an extra year to mature as people. Yeah. Good idea overall, I think, yeah. But I do remember I went most of my way through school without the school uniform. I think it was in third year in secondary school when the school uniform was introduced. It took away my individuality, and I'm very much individual.
Yeah, we became a homogenized group,
Yeah. Never felt comfortable in the school uniform, and the day I finished my leaving cert, it was thrown away. Yeah. Did you go directly from secondary school to the workforce? And if you did, how did you manage to, establish relationships in the workplace with your colleagues?
Yeah, I did. So I wanted to be a school teacher. That was another thing, John, in 5th year, which as you refer to as the first year of the leaving cert cycle. transition year wasn't a thing back in the day, but we had first, second, third. Then you did your junior cert. We had known as the inter back then.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
we did the inter, and then in our school there was fourth, fifth, and sixth, which is fourth year was effectively what has become TY, transition year now. But by the time we got to fifth year, and I was a fully fledged Tibby at that stage, right? And by the time I got to fifth year, I began to realize that I was having great fun. I had a great time in secondary. And I began to realize that my classmates were setting career goals and college aspirations, and were beginning to line up their Leaving Cert subjects to get the points or whatever it was back in the day to get into college. And I realized I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I decided in my wisdom that I wanted to be a school teacher, a primary school teacher. But the only reason, John, was short hours and long holidays. There was nothing about saving the planet or teaching the next generation. It was just, that seemed like an easy gig. And so I set about that. But I failed that even, right? Being that you needed an honour in Irish to get into teacher training college, and I didn't get the honour in Irish. Didn't put in the work. Let's call a spade a spade. And so when I'm Leaving Cert, and then in my Leaving Cert year, I developed a thing called glandular fever around Easter, March of that year. And I was very unwell, ended up in the hospital with it, and never went back to school. So did my mock Leaving Cert. I don't think it was called the mocks back then, but anyway, whatever it was called, I did the mock Leaving Cert just before the Easter break, and then got sick and ended up in hospital, and I never went back to school. And I decided to do my Leaving Cert that year just for the practice, right? Didn't matter. So I went to do the Leaving Cert. Of course, that took all the pressure off in terms of exam results and whatnot. But I did okay. Right? I was never an A student. I never wanted to be honest, right? Never an A student, but I got everything I wanted to get, certainly everything I deserved to get, including I didn't get the honour in Irish. But that didn't really thwart the plan, because I decided, okay, I go back and do Irish again at night. I'll get a job for a year, do Irish at night, add the points together, and go to teacher training college next year. That was the plan. This is the summer of 1980. And so I ended up getting a job. My dad was working with Green Isle Frozen Foods. I'm sure you know that brand around.
Yeah, of course.
And so he took me to work for a day with him, just to get me probably out from under my mother's feet. And we ended up in Cleary's department store. You'll remember that, John?
I do, yes.
Ended up in the restaurant on the third floor, a place called the Terrace Restaurant. And I was to meet my dad there. I actually had an interview in BHS across the road, British Home Stores, for the illustrious role of kitchen porter. Right. And I got offered a job, but start on the following Monday. But didn't I go across the road to meet my dad? It was the same day in Cleary's Terrace Restaurant. And he introduced me to the guy who owned the business that ran the restaurant there. And he says to me, he says, you don't want to be a kitchen porter. He says, I've got cashier leaving on Monday. You could start here instead if you like. Now, the pay was less, but I'll be honest and thought, sounds easier to be a cashier than a kitchen porter. I'll take less money. Thank you very much. Right. Yeah, that started me off in a career, John, in catering, completely by accident. But are there any real accidents? I don't know. I believe I was meant to fall into that role. I love people, and I'm and I can get on with people. I've got reasonable social skills that, of course, have been honed over the years through my profession. But fundamentally, because I enjoyed the work, and the work was all about people, I got good at it. And because I got good at it, I got on in it, if that makes sense.
Of course, yeah.
And that led to a very rewarding career in hospitality. Spent 8 years with that particular company. We opened up in the Ilac Centre. You might remember that.
I do remember it, yeah.
A restaurant there called Fallon's on the Moore Street end, on a balcony above them now. I was there for some years. Then I took a job with Bewley's in cafes, and then ended up general manager of Bewley's in Grafton Street in the mid-90s, and for 4 years, which was a wonderful experience. So I went from leaving school at 17 to managing viewings in Grafton Street at age 28. I was very young for that role, but I'd worked hard. I'd learned a lot. I was confident and competent in what I did by that stage, and it has led to where we are now.
Yeah, I think what you're saying there, Colm, is you had the life skills to get people working around you effectively from an early stage, and that was a big bonus in your career progression, or to get people who could be good technical, at their jobs, but they lack those people skills to organize people around them. They're the people who kind of flounder, I suppose, in their careers, you could say. Looking back at your past, what would you consider as being character building blocks that have shaped the person you've become today?
Okay, good question. I think that point at age 30 that I mentioned earlier, where I hit a personal wall and realized that I had just been drifting along with my life. I got on. At the time, I was general manager of Beauties in Grafton Street, which I'd taken the role at age 28. And I was very young for that role, but I was hardworking and capable, confident, competent. And that team that I managed then was about 200 strong. And the management team that ran the rest of the team was about 18 or 20 strong. And I was at the pinnacle of that, if you like. So your comment earlier about my ability to get others to, focus their efforts, their talents around a particular goal and accept that as a compliment, it is something I've developed over the years. And it's probably the only thing I'm good at. Right? So But I put that to good use for myself and for others. I help those who don't have those skill sets to direct their efforts in a meaningful and worthy way. So waking up at age 30 and realizing if something doesn't change here, Colm O'Brien, all you qualified yourself to do for the rest of your life is to work hard and earn a living, right? And that was nowhere near satisfying enough for me. So something I had to give. So that was a moment of truth for me. Stepping into my own business at age 35. So it took me 5 years of training, reading, looking at business people, building up my confidence to know that if I bet on myself, I'd be okay. And it took me 5 years from that point to get to the point where we actually took on our own business, which was a Beauties Cafe franchise in Limerick. And even at that, John, I found this one interesting, right? So we took it over the June bank holiday weekend in 1998. Okay. And we moved to Limerick in the June bank holiday. It took another 3 weeks to get the deal over the line. So we opened up on a Monday in June. We had the keys, and we opened up on our first Monday, which was about the third Monday in June of 1998. And I was scared stiff, turned the key to open the door in my own business for the first time. And despite the fact that I had nearly 2 decades of experience running this type of business for other people, right? Including the biggest and most famous cafe in the country, Beauties in Grafton Street. Managed that for 4 years for somebody else, right? You couldn't get a bigger job in the industry. And yet here I was, turning the key in my own door, scared stiff, like literally. Thankfully, a very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, John Barry, had driven all the way down from Dublin that morning to Limerick to be our first customer, which was very nice of him. But I was delighted to see him for a whole load of reasons, including it meant I didn't have to start. I could open the door and then abdicate my responsibilities and go have coffee and breakfast with my good friend here. And that lasted for about 45 minutes, but I could feel this welling up inside of me, Colm, you're evading. You need to start your avoiding. And eventually I told him, I said, John, I love you, but I gotta go. And I got stuck in. And of course then I was fine, like riding a bike, but I was scared stiff, John. which makes no sense. That cafe failed. Another pivotal moment. That was 1998. By 2002, it was game over because we got a rent review, which brought our rent to €1,000 a day. €1,000 a day, John, selling cups of coffee in Limerick City Centre or a coffee shop. So we knew it was over. It took us another 3 years to exit, effectively losing €1,000 a day. And €1,000 a day, to all it did, John, was give us the allowed us to turn the key in the door to go in and trade. That's all it did. It wasn't that our bills stopped there; they only started there. So that business failed spectacularly, but it led to school meals, and it led to my infamous, by this stage, man of the train moments that I talk about regularly, where one meeting on a train in early summer 2003 led to us starting a school meals business in the last quarter of 2003. We supplied 27 children on our first day, and we just finished our 20th year of school lunches. And we supplied 25,000 children on our last day of term, just gone. So, we've grown and we've lost a bit, but we exceeded 1,000-fold volume in those years. Now, there have been other competitors going into the marketplace and we've lost a bit here and there. But we still got an 8-figure business. Not that we still got, but we built an 8-figure business from the very humble beginnings. Our first week's turnover, John, some of the listeners might be interested, this was €160 for the week. And our last week of term this year, we probably invoiced about €350,000. So it's been some journey.
Yeah, that's a business you've been building over a number of years. And well done to you, Colm, for sticking it out, because a lot of people might have decided, I'll jump off the ship and try and find something else that can be generating more income quicker for me. But you stayed the course, and now you're reaping the rewards. Final question here for you, Colm. Name one relationship you'd like to have again, given another chance, and what would you do better this time around?
Okay. I tell you the relationship that I'd like to have again and do better with, and that's with a certain Colm O'Brien. With myself, if I could go back, we can't turn the clock back at all, right? If I could go back, I would tell Colm O'Brien to be braver earlier. That's what I do different. To be braver earlier. I see kids these days, as we all did. I told you I didn't get bent out of shape from my leaving cert because I thought it was just practice, right? But there are kids, like, let's call a spade, John. There are children, unfortunately, who don't make it to leaving cert because the pressure gets too much, right? That's not good by any stretch of the imagination. So very little matters. There are very few things in life that happen to us in any given day that will matter 5 years from now. Very few. We lost our mother, and my dad lost his wife in February of this year to cancer. Poor woman. She's great, fantastic woman, taught us a lot. I told you some of her wisdom phrases that she had. And for me, I would like to think I would have been braver earlier. It took me to age 30 to realize I needed to grab hold of my life. And this is the lesson I took from that, John, is if we don't have a plan for our lives, a direction, well, then life will give us one. Without fail, okay? And I think many people wake up at some point and say, how did I get here? And they probably got there through indecision, inaction. So we need to set a direction. We need to decide for me to feel fulfilled, for John Burns to feel fulfilled, I'd like my life to look like blah, whatever blah is for John, right? Or for Colm, or for any of your listeners. And then we need to take steps. We need to measure how far away we are from blah, right? No matter what age we are, okay? Because I can't go back to when I was 30 or 21 or 25, right? I can only start from here. But I'm happy to say that I've been evolving for many years now. I know where I am now. I know where I'm headed, where I'd like my life to, how I'd like my life to be in what I referred to earlier as Act 3. And therefore I take steps every day towards that. Another thing, I'm not fanatical about anything, John. I'm not one of these who says you need to be working 24/7 or else you're a loser. But that to me is the height of BS. Right? And we have to decide what way we'd like our lives to look at a point in the future. And then we've got to align our actions today to give ourselves the best opportunity of arriving there. And I've used the analogy before, I'll use it here if I may. Let's imagine, I'm 60 now, right? Let's imagine, Stephen Covey has a wonderful concept called the 80th birthday, where he gets you to imagine your 80th birthday and look backwards, and you've arrived at your 80th birthday with your life intact, right? The way you'd like it to be. So if we imagine we'd like life to be perfect by the age 80, perfect for me, perfect for you, whatever that might look like, perfect for our listener. Well then, let's imagine that destination is represented on the map of Ireland by arriving in Letterkenny, right? I'm not sure which way the map would show here, Letterkenny, right? But we got to realize where we're starting from. So I'm starting from the Midwest here, Killaloo, okay? And to get to Letterkenny by my 80th birthday, I got to head north. There's no point in me heading towards Cork or Wexford or Dublin, right? But many people, think about this, many people don't know they want to head to Letterkenny. They just know that life isn't working for them. They're not happy. So what do they do, John? They work harder, more hours, faster, right? And they end up driving around. Take the M50 in Dublin, right? Drive around that, back around it, and faster, and break the speed limits, and still get nowhere near Letterkenny. And that's what many, many, many people do. And I was one of those people till age 30 where I realized, you know what, I got to figure out what my Letterkenny looks like. But if you know that your destination is in the direction of Letterkenny, well, then you need to align all your decisions, financial decisions, your health decisions. I talk about health, wealth, relationships, and spirit. You need to align those 4 areas of your life, the 4 pillars for a fully formed life: health, wealth, relationships, and spirit, with you arriving at a point in the future where you're happy looking back and saying, you know what, John, you did well, you made it. Colm, you did well, you made it. Mary, you did well, you made it. For you. The only competition I have is me, and the only competition you have is you.
Yeah. That's an interesting outlook in life, Colm, and I would say I wish there was a chance myself in my own life I wish I had been braver when I was younger, but I wasn't. So I have to live with the consequences of it now, of course, but I have found my purpose. And like yourself, I'm heading in the direction of Letterkenny, I should say. Yeah, this has been a great conversation today. So Colm, I'd like to thank you for your time. And before we conclude here, I have some great takeaways to the audience. And the first takeaway I have for the audience today is try and recognize what your core strengths are in the business world. But more importantly, try to develop additional skill sets around your core strengths. And as Colm mentioned today, he had a great ability to get people working around him. But when he went into his own business, he had to develop more business skills. And he did that by reading and putting those skills into practice. Secondly, I think Colm made a great point here today. It's never too late to transition from one career, whether it's paid employment, into self-employment. The day you do it, it can become very rewarding, but you have to stay the course. And I think also Colm mentioned here today is have a purpose in life. Without that purpose, you're going to drift.
Actually, in recent years, I've been on a real journey to discover who I am and be unapologetically me, because that is what I want my daughters to be. I love them. I embrace them for everything that they are. And how can I do that if I'm not there myself? So it's been a relationship that has impacted every part of my life, and it's encouraged me to grow and develop as they've grown and developed.